Alright, the climb beyond 2200 continues with a Caro Kann. Obviously, we love that. So, which line will my opponent go for? I mean, obviously we're expecting d4, but there can be a variety of moves. I mean, c4, knight c3, knight f3, f4, d4 it is, which is obviously the most popular move. And here white has quite a few options, and if you're interested, I have a full Caro Kann course on my school community, first link in the description. You can get a free 7-day trial to check it out. My opponent goes for the exchange variation. So if he plays c4, we'll be entering the Panov attack, which is what I play as the white pieces, and I have some really fun lines against the Panov. He goes knight to f3 though, which is a bit more modest, but it's perfectly reasonable, and it's less challenging than the line that we faced a couple of videos ago with bishop to d3. That's the more challenging line. But knight to f3 is quite nice because it's not trying to stop us from developing our bishop. So, okay, bishop b5. There are some lines where queen to a5 check is a move, forcing knight to c3. I think bishop g4 is far easier, though, and that's what I recommend in the course. Because we can just develop our light square bishop, play e6, develop the bishop, play knight f6, castle. I mean, we could even bring the knight to e7 if we want. Queen c7 is a move. It's just very easy. It's a very easy position to play. So knight c3 voluntarily. Okay, let's go e6. We've got the bishop outside the pawn chain, so now we want to shut the pawn chain. And I think what my opponent might be trying to do is play pawn to h3 in this position, which can lead to some rather difficult lines if we're not careful, but he castles. The knight on c3 is kind of misplaced, so I'm kind of unsure as to why it's there. But let's go bishop d6, stopping this bishop from developing to f4. The bishop is very strong on the d6 square. We're not concerned about my opponent taking. We will just take back with the b-pawn and have a very nice pawn structure. We can just develop the knight, castle, maybe play c5 in the future. Okay, rook e1. So knight takes d5 is maybe a threat in these lines because the e-pawn is pinned. So we can play knight to f6 or knight to e7, both just defending d5. I think knight to d7 probably... Sorry, knight e7 makes the most sense. Just because we're also breaking the pin, and bishop to g5 is less of a concern if the knight is on e7 as opposed to f6. So if bishop to g5, I assume bishop c7 is reasonable, kind of counter-attacking and unpinning. Yeah, and I guess if take, we can just take back with the bishop, and then knight d5 is not a move because the bishop breaks the pin. Although castling is probably also completely reasonable, which maybe I prefer. Maybe I prefer. So yeah, this is just kind of an ideal setup, to be honest. I mean, if white isn't careful, we might just castle and take and potentially just win a pawn outright. So white does have to be slightly careful. So, okay, if we castle in this position, I don't really see an issue with that. That looks like the easiest move. Let's castle. I'm not really worried about my king's safety. I mean, our king is not really in any danger. This knight is not in danger. I mean, it's defended so many times. You know, I'm not really thinking too hard about any knight d5 ideas because, you know, after something like take, the knight on e7 is never hanging because it's defended twice, even if it's attacked twice. What? That just doesn't work. That's just a free piece. What am I missing? Now, obviously, if we take with the knight, then our queen hangs, but we're not doing that. The knight is defended 1, 2, 3 times. It's defended twice. Yes, white can remove one of the defenders, but he needs to remove 2 defenders, which he can't do. And now we're just up a full piece. So that's a result. I think I'm actually going to play f6 here, which looks really counterintuitive, but I'm just taking the bishop completely out of the game. I'm not really concerned about this diagonal. I mean, if queen b3, d5 is defended. That's not really a big issue. So the bishop goes back to d2. The bishop obviously can't be on f4 because we control f4. So I have to say, very confused that a 2200 player would blunder that, but hey, I mean, the Caro Kann is pretty damn good. So, okay, the only thing we've really got to worry about is, like, I don't know, Queen b3 or Bishop d3 or something, just trying to attack on the king side. I don't think we're really in any danger, though. I think knight to knight to g6 makes a lot of sense. Probably after h3, bishop f5, we don't have to commit. His knight's completely out of the game anyway, because by having this pawn on f6, although it obviously weakens this diagonal, we are completely shutting this knight out of the game. So, yeah, I think my opponent just completely blundered that. Obviously, I was calculating it, because it's something you need to check, absolutely, but it just straight up doesn't work. So, okay, bishop d3. Here I was going to go knight f4. This is my idea, to just try to attack. I don't see a reason not to play it. Let me just think one sec. If here, here, queen c2, take. If g6, he can sack the bishop, and then he has perpetual check. I don't really want to sack the I don't really want to sack the pawn on h7. So perhaps knight back? Or I could just ignore it, to be fair. I could just go rook e8. He has no threat, so let me just think. If h3... Ooh, can I go knight h4? Targeting the knight. If here, queen c2, knight back, knight h4. That's interesting. That is actually interesting. If here, queen c2 unpinning. I do have f5 and the knight is protected. Yeah, that works. Okay, I think knight h4 just ends the game. Effectively. Because the knight is now lost. Or, well, it's going to be traded. But the queen isn't going to be coming to f3. That's the problem. I can always rotate this knight in if I need to. As long as bishop h7 ideas don't work, which I don't think they do. Yeah, bishop e2, that's fine. I guess I just trade? No? Or I could even... I could just bring the knight back, I suppose. But, I mean, trading has to be good. Take, queen takes. Pressure on d5, bishop c7. Yeah, I mean, we're up a piece for a pawn. If you take with the pawn, then I mean, bishop f5 or bishop h3 is going to be winning. So bishop takes looks forced. Let's take. And obviously we're just not going to hang the d5 pawn. That's all we've got to do. Bishop c7 followed by rook e8 or queen d6. These kinds of ideas look very nice. You could play the move king h8 because, if queen d5, then bishop h2 check picks up the queen. That's true, but we're also just playing for tricks. That's playing for tricks. The king on h8, I would argue, is a bit more vulnerable because it could get back ranked. Okay, rook e6. Good move. Rook d7, though, no. Rook d7. Rook here. Rook here. Take, check. King moves. I don't really want to give up a second pawn. That seems like too much. King f7 is interesting, but queen h5 check ideas are annoying. Stops queen d6, which is smart. So here. There's no infiltration. So I'm going to go for it anyway. I guess I can just go rook d8. There's no infiltration on e7. This is the downside of playing f6, though, is that it leaves the e6 square more vulnerable. Okay, queen h3. What? Okay, my opponent is setting some traps. So if rook e8, rook takes. I do have queen takes, actually. No, that's just winning. If here, take, check, take, rook here, that's winning. Knight d8 might be strong. There's no threat, really. Yeah, doesn't knight d8 just force a queen trade? Rook f6. I guess rook f6 anyway, so I guess rook e8 makes more sense. Just to get more pieces off. Rook e8, well, rook e8 then queen e8. Then rook e1, kind of annoying, actually. So perhaps knight d8 is the best. I'm just trying to be really accurate here, because I don't want to give white anything. The rook can't move with check, that's the point. So you can't stop me from trading the queens. Let's go knight d8. So I'm expecting rook takes f6. Point being, if I take the rook, you take my queen. And on rook f6, queen h3, the rook can take on f8 with check first. That's the idea. But after king takes and pawn takes, yes, white has 2 pawns for the piece, but it's not enough. It's not enough. So yeah, he allows a queen trade, which obviously I'll accept. If rook takes, I'll go rook e8. This bishop doesn't look at anything useful. If it was a light squared bishop, you know, maybe there's ideas, but it's a dark squared bishop. It's not very powerful. So let's go rook e8, taking the only open file. I guess it's rook h5, targeting d5, but I have rook to e2. Rook d1. I have pawn g5, but I'm not sure I want to play it. Pawn g5 feels risky, but I guess knight f7 guards the pawn. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's go pawn g5. I don't think there's any danger. I mean, like, king g7, knight f7 seems easy to defend. My opponent is creating some counterplay. The reason I'm saying on rook e2 that my opponent will probably go rook d1... Whoa, okay. Okay, well, that's desperate. I mean, he can win a few pawns, but, like, I'm up 2 pieces now. That's way too much. That's way too much. I mean, he can take with check. I have 3 choices. King f7. Take. That's probably my favorite. Try and bring the king in. Well, then I guess maybe this is a problem, but I always have rook e7. So let's go king f7. So after rook takes here, I probably want knight to e6, bringing the knight into the game. Knight c6 keeps the e-file open, ready to double up though. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Again, rook d7, I meet with rook e7. That's not a problem. This rook doesn't have a good way into the game, because the e-file is the only open file, which I dominate. So he has 4 pawns for a bishop and a knight, but it's not going to be enough. I have 3 pawns left over. If rook h5, I assume king g6, forcing the rook to move, and then rook e2, rook a to e8. Rook e1 is a big threat, not just because of back rank mate, but to try and trade the rooks. But I can also try and sweep up more pawns. I mean, white can try and make the argument my knight isn't the best piece in the world. It's being controlled nicely by these pawns. But, I mean, I have lots of time. There's not really a big rush for me in this position. I'm just trying to be solid and facilitate trades, facilitate infiltrations. I mean, yeah, rook f5, just king g6. Hitting the rook. Again, there's no real targets. The rook can't come to the 7th rank. My king is perfectly safe on g6. he can't bring the other rook into the game. That's the big problem. So he can't actually make many threats. I mean, rook b5, sure. I can actually just go rook e7 here, because if take, I can take care of check and pick up the rook. So that's probably the easiest move, just preparing to double up. This, I would say, is not a fancy move, because I can always play b6 if I need to. If d5, hitting the knight... I guess if knight e5, that is rook b7. Although, technically I could go knight f3 check, take, bishop h2 check, takes, and rook takes b7, sacrificing both pieces to pick up the rook. He does go pawn d5, yeah. Although I could just play knight d8. Could go knight a5. I could counterattack. And if take here, 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 or actually take is probably fine. I could also just ignore it and double up because I threaten back rank mate. That's probably the easiest move. Let's do that. My opponent's fighting, sure. He's doing a good job of trying here, but I'm up 2 whole pieces and I'm way more active, so I'm not really sure how he generates enough counterplay. F1. I think I can still go for these ideas. But it's probably a bit overkill. I can just drop back my knight and defend b7. That's going to be the easiest move, realistically. Knight on, because now, with my rook already on e8, the knight on d8 isn't a problem, because previously it was blocking in my rook, whereas now the rooks are situated perfectly. As long as I can stop this pawn, which I can. Okay, pawn f4. Let's deliver a check, and then play rook to e1. I was waiting for the f-pawn to move. I was kind of hoping it would move so I could get my bishop into the game via this diagonal. Okay, he sacks his rook. I mean, obviously this is game over now. My opponent tried to create some counterplay, which is fair, but it's not enough. The problem is he's literally losing a rook after king h1, because on rook e1, if you take, then I checkmate you, so... Let's just go rook e1, forcing a rook trade, ending the game, because I'm up way too much material. Let's just say a resignation is slightly overdue. That's one way to put it. Go king g5. If h4, I'll just take. Yeah, I'm not really sure why my opponent's playing on. Let's take. I don't know. Knight f7 stops pawn from coming into d6. I'll infiltrate with my rook at some point. I'm not really in a rush. There's no rush at all. This pawn can't move because I take. This pawn can't move because I take. This pawn can't move because I take. And I'm just going to bring my rook into the game. I can probably just go rook to e5, force c4. Although probably going b5 is easier. Just stopping c4 altogether. There's loads of ways to win this. Obviously, I'll try and play the cleanest way, but... Okay. Let's go knight d6. This pawn can't advance, so he's going to have to play b3. And if I could just set up a blockade, which is what I'm effectively doing with all of the moves that I've been playing, I'm setting up blockades so these pawns can't move. Although it looks strong because they're all defending each other, my opponent only has pawns remaining, so they can't advance because they all have to stay defending each other. I mean, this pawn literally can't advance. This pawn can't advance because I'll take. This pawn can't advance because you lose this. And now I deliver a check and I pick up the base of the pawn chain. I mean, if king here, it's probably overkill. And yeah, I mean, the problem is when pawns advance, they leave things behind. So if h4, king f6, this pawn can't come to g5 because I'll take. So Obviously, that's what he does, but it's not going to lead to anything substantial. I can always sack my knight for the pawn on f5 anyway, if I really want to diffuse the situation, because I'm just up too much material. And yeah, the power of the Caro Kann, ladies and gents. And obviously the knight on c3 way early on in the game, I said it can often be very misplaced on that square. And although my opponent played a silly tactic, really, which didn't work, let's check the king out of the way. I think it still demonstrates the fact the knight was a bit misplaced. So if king to g3, I'll play knight to e4 check, kicking the king further out of the position. If the king comes here, I guess just rook h2. And I'm going to force the pawn forwards. And then probably just deliver a check and pick this up, maybe. Actually, no, I could just bring the king up like this. It's really not a big deal. I mean, the pawns aren't going anywhere. In fact, I could sack, but let's just go rook h3. I can always sack my knight. That's the problem for white. I mean, even if I didn't have a knight here, I'd still be fine. It would just be slightly more difficult. But with the knight, I can just use it as a sacrifice. And as long as we don't get ourselves forked, we'll be fine. And my opponent eventually does resign. So GG, we're on 2-2-2-2. Not a bad elo. And yeah, let's jump into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. All right, so 87.5 for my opponent, 94.4 for us. I don't think we made a single error that game. Beautiful. So we have an exchange Caro Kann. Personally, with the white pieces, I play c4 here, the Panov attack. But my opponent plays knight to f3, which is one of the easier lines, but also one of the most common lines in the exchange. So knight c6, bishop e5, bishop g4. Now, here, things can get slightly interesting after the move c4, and also after h3. Because after h3, we cannot go bishop h5. And this is what I thought he was going for. Of g4, bishop g6, and knight e5, and we can get into a lot of trouble. So in this position, as I state in the school course, we have to just take. And it's actually fine. I mean, queen a5 check is the best move here. I think e6 is easier, though. And although we give up our light square bishop, it doesn't really matter. White has no attack. And if he wants to take, then I mean, we're better. So, but knight c3 is just weird. It's a weird move. It doesn't do anything. We just go e6 and defend. Again, if h3, we're not going to retreat because we're going to get into trouble. We're just going to snap and play, I don't know, rook c8 is good, bishop d6 is good. We can just develop normally. If you want to take, that's fine. No issue. My opponent castles, which is already completely wrong, apparently, after bishop d6, the best move, stopping the bishop coming to f4. So rook e1, knight e7, knight f6 is slightly better, apparently, but I preferred the knight on e7, just supporting the other knight. Bishop g5, castles is best, and here it's already -1. I mean, guys, the Caro Kann is unbelievable, in my opinion, because, like, white hasn't done anything clearly wrong. Like, you know, I can say, oh, the knight is misplaced on c3. I can say, oh, you know, the bishop doesn't really do anything on b5. Oh, maybe, you know, he should have gone bishop f4 before I played bishop d6. But white hasn't done anything wrong. But he's already significantly worse. So here my opponent, of course, blunders horrifically. Now, what can white do here? I was thinking maybe he goes h3. And let's say we take. Well, already I win the d4 pawn. So, ouch. How do you deal with that? Well, do you go knight to e2, defending the pawn? Well, nah, because then I just take. And your pawn structure sucks. And after queen c7, you're in trouble. I mean, we're just so much better. We're just better set up. Because, again, the knight shouldn't be on c3. If white was able to have the pawn on c3 and the knight on d2, so let's just shuffle things around a minute. If we had this position, we're still better, but white's okay. The problem is the knight on c3, and my opponent proceeds to give me the knight anyway. So, and what's hilarious as well is even if we don't take the knight, we're still better. So that's quite funny. So ed5. And yeah, if you take, and take, and take, and take, I'm still up a piece. So my opponent miscalculates, plays c3. I go f6, which is one of the best moves, kicking the bishop all the way back. Knight g6, preparing to invade. Bishop d3, knight h4. I was calculating bishop h7, king h7, and queen c2 check. And I was like, knight g6, knight h4. Am I in trouble here? Here I do have f5. And I was like, oh, is my bishop getting trapped? I don't know. No, the knight is hanging, so it's fine. Yeah, so on here, I realized, oh, h5, the knight's hanging. There's no counter-attacking opportunities. So after something like take, h3, bishop h5, g4. I mean, you can play this, but queen h4, I mean, white is going to get slaughtered. Like, take. I can take with the rook. I can also play a move like, I don't know, king f6. Just keeping well, that maybe allows rook e6. So let's say king f7. This is going to be pretty devastating. So bishop e2 is the best move, but then I just trade everything. Go bishop c7, preparing queen d6. I think rook e6 was the best move here. But after queen d7, I really thought he was going to go for this. And then I was like, oh, do I really want to play this? Like, take, queen d5, queen f7. Do I want this? I'm not sure. Engine likes it, but I'm giving him a little bit too much. Queen h3, though, I was very happy to see. We just go knight d8. Best move. Here I thought he was going to go rook f6. Oh my god. The engine finds a disgusting move. Bishop h2. What? Everything in this position is under attack. The point is, if the queen takes, then I take the rook, and you can't take my queen. If the king takes, I take the queen with check, so there's no time for rook f8. So after you take, I take the rook, and I'm up a full rook. So you can't take the bishop. You have to move the king, and after take, I retreat the bishop, and I get an extra pawn. Realistically, I was not going to play bishop h2. That's an awesome move, but I was not going to play that. I was going to play queen h3. And after rook f8, king f8, and you take here, I mean, white has 2 pawns for the piece, but these pawns completely suck, and the knight's coming to f4. So, yeah, white doesn't survive this. So rook e3, I obviously trade. Rook e8. I thought rook h5 was a good move. g5 is the best response. Bishop takes is just not it. I was expecting this, and I was going to play knight f7, just guarding. And after something like take and take, oh, we can throw in rook e2 actually first. And after rook d1, the engine likes f5, but also f takes g5 is probably fine. I mean, take, we have lots of play. But my opponent sacks the bishop. He does not have the counterplay. Knight c6, if check, I just go here. So rook f5, rook b5, rook e7 is a nice move, because if takes, we have bishop h2 check, and we pick up the rook. So after d5, rook a to e8, gets a brilliant move. I mean, that's a bit of an overstatement. If you take, it's obviously just mate in 2 after take and take. So rook f1, here we go knight d8. Engine here likes knight e5, but I think the point is if rook b7 to go knight f6, sorry, knight f3 check. And after here, we go here. This was an idea I had previously. I was thinking maybe king h1 could be played, though. But here knight d2 is the best move. Don't know about that. Knight d8 is far easier, just defending the pawn. And after f4, bishop to b6. You can't move the king, because after rook e1, the game is completely over. You have to sack the rook for the bishop, because if you take, it's mate. And if you move the pawn up to give the king an escape square, it's mate in 5, but it's just game over, obviously. So bishop e6 is the best move. g4, obviously we're going to trade the rooks off, and here it's just a matter of forcing the pawns into awkward positions, and then slowly but surely sweeping them up, and my opponent eventually resigns. A little bit later than he should have, but hey, can't blame him for trying. But yeah, the Caro Kann is really good. Really good. And I used a line in my Caro Kann course, the one on school. And yeah, I mentioned in that course the fact the knight on c3 is just misplaced. And as long as we don't fall for any tricks with h3 and, you know, like g4, bishop g6, and knight to e5, then we're perfectly fine. We're just clearly better. So yeah, you can check that out in the description. But for now, if you want to watch another very interesting game in the Caro Kann, check out the video up there. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the Climb to and Beyond 2200 Rapid, check out the playlist down there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.